I still remember the day my daughter's fiancé looked me straight in the eyes and said I should disappear from their lives forever, his voice sharp like a blade, his words echoing through my bones as if I'd suddenly become a burden too heavy for them to carry, and that moment, that one single second, changed everything inside me forever, because it wasn't just what he said, it was how easily he said it, how calmly he tore apart the years I had spent raising her alone, through storms and sickness and heartbreak, all for her happiness, and now the man she loved wanted me gone, out of the picture, erased like an old photograph no one wanted to look at anymore, and I remember standing there, coffee cup trembling in my hands, pretending not to break while inside me something deep was collapsing, quietly, painfully, like an old house under its own weight, and I looked at my daughter, my sweet Emma, the one I'd once carried on my back when she was too tired to walk home from school, and she just looked down, silent, her fingers tangled together, not defending me, not even meeting my eyes, and that silence hurt worse than any insult, because silence means agreement, and I realized right then, I was truly alone in that room, but I didn't cry, not yet, because mothers like me, we don't collapse in front of the people who hurt us, we collapse later, alone, in the dark, when no one can hear. That night I sat on my porch watching the rain fall across the old wooden steps, thinking about everything I'd given up for her. The late nights, the second jobs, the way I'd gone without food so she could eat, and I asked myself, where did I go wrong? How did I raise a daughter who could let someone talk to her mother like that? But love makes us blind, doesn't it? And I knew Emma was in love, so deeply that she couldn't see the truth about the man standing beside her. His name was Tyler, charming, rich, the kind of man who knows exactly what to say to win people over, except he never tried to win me, he just wanted me gone, said I made Emma cling to her past, said my presence made her less independent, and I laughed when I first heard that, because independence wasn't what he wanted for her. He wanted control, complete control, and she was too blinded by love to see it. But I stayed quiet, watched from a distance, and when their wedding day came, I showed up anyway, even though I wasn't invited. I stood in the back of the church in a simple dress, heart pounding, just to see her walk down the aisle, to make sure she was okay, and as she walked past, her eyes met mine for a split second, and I saw something, fear, doubt, sadness, I'm not sure, but it wasn't happiness, it wasn't the look of a woman marrying the love of her life, and when the ceremony ended, and everyone cheered, I slipped away unnoticed, my heart heavier than ever, but deep down I made a decision that night. If he wanted me gone, I'd disappear, but not before leaving behind something he'd never forget. Over the next few months, I stayed quiet, disappeared from Emma's life like he wanted, no calls, no messages, not even on her birthday, and I heard through the neighbors that she'd moved into his fancy house in the suburbs, big glass windows, perfect lawns, everything that looked like a dream from the outside, but I knew better, I knew the kind of man Tyler was, he wanted perfection, obedience, silence, and Emma wasn't built for that, she had her mother's fire, though he tried to dim it. Then one evening, out of nowhere, I got a call. It was Emma, crying, saying she didn't know what to do anymore, that he'd changed, that he yelled, controlled who she saw, even tracked her phone, and when she said, "Mom, I think I made a mistake," my heart broke but I stayed calm, because that's what mothers do when their children finally see the truth. I told her, "Come home," but she whispered, "He won't let me," and those words burned through me like acid. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the clock, waiting, hoping she'd show up. And then, a week later, she did, face bruised, eyes red, holding a small bag with just a few clothes. She collapsed into my arms sobbing like a little girl again, and all I could do was hold her, stroke her hair, whisper, "You're safe now," even though my own hands were shaking. Tyler called, of course, screaming on the phone, threatening me, saying I was ruining his life, and I just listened, quiet, until he said the same words again, "You should disappear forever," and I smiled, because that was the last time he'd ever speak to me that way. That night, while Emma slept, I wrote a letter to him, not to argue, not to plead, but to give him what he wanted, a disappearance, but with a gift. I placed the letter inside a small box with something very special, a gold locket. Inside that locket was a picture, Emma as a child, holding her father's hand. Her real father, the man Tyler had told everyone was absent and deadbeat. What Tyler never knew was that Emma's father had been an attorney, a very powerful one, and before he passed away, he left a trust fund for Emma, but I never told her, because I wanted her to grow up strong, independent, not relying on money, but now, that trust fund would be my message to Tyler. The next morning, I mailed the box to his office with a short note, "For every word you used to break a family, this will be the one thing you can never buy." Inside the box, along with the locket, were documents transferring that trust directly to Emma's name only, making her financially independent forever, beyond his reach, beyond his control. A week later, I heard he tried to contact her again, begging her to come back, but it was too late. Emma filed for divorce, using her father's old law firm to represent her, and within months, Tyler lost everything, his reputation, his influence, even his job, because the firm discovered how he'd been manipulating accounts to maintain his image. Karma, I guess, moves quietly, but when it strikes, it doesn't miss. One evening, months later, Emma sat beside me on the porch, her hand over mine, saying, "Mom, I finally see it. You were trying to protect me," and I smiled, though my eyes filled with tears, because those words were all I ever wanted to hear. She asked about the gift I sent him, and I told her everything, every secret I had kept hidden just to make sure she could stand on her own when the time came, and she just whispered, "Thank you," resting her head on my shoulder. For the first time in years, the air around us felt peaceful again. But the story didn't end there. A few months later, I received a letter, no return address, but I knew it was from him. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. He wrote, "You were right. I treated her like she was mine to control, not love. I've lost everything. I hope one day she forgives me." I didn't reply. Some people need silence to hear themselves. I burned that letter in the fireplace and watched the smoke disappear into the night sky, whispering to myself, "Now I've disappeared, just like you asked." And maybe I had, not physically, but emotionally, I had let go of the anger, the pain, the guilt. All that remained was peace. Years have passed now. Emma has a daughter of her own, and sometimes I watch her with that same fierce love I once had, and I wonder if she truly understands how far a mother's heart can stretch before it breaks. She once asked me, "Mom, do you regret disappearing back then?" And I told her the truth, "No, sweetheart. Sometimes, to protect someone you love, you have to vanish for a while, but never forever." And when I see her now, stronger, happier, building a life on her own terms, I know that the gift I left him wasn't just about revenge, it was about freedom, for her, for me, for the generations after us. Tyler became just a memory, a lesson written in the ashes of our past. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear his words echo, "Disappear forever," and I smile, because I did, in a way he never expected. I disappeared from his story but became the hero in my daughter's. I gave him the gift of regret, the kind that haunts you when you realize you destroyed the one person who truly cared for the woman you claimed to love. And that, I think, is the sweetest kind of justice, not revenge, but the quiet power of knowing that goodness, no matter how bruised, always finds its way back home. So if you ever find yourself in my place, standing across from someone who tries to erase your worth, remember this: silence isn't weakness. Disappearing doesn't mean losing. Sometimes it's the loudest, strongest way to say, "You can't break me." Because the truth is, even when we vanish, our love, our strength, our lessons, they stay, they echo, and one day, those echoes turn into the very thing that saves the people we die for. That's what I learned. That's the day I disappeared, and the day I truly lived. Years went by faster than I ever expected, and sometimes when the morning light hits the porch just right, I can almost see my younger self sitting there again, coffee cup in hand, waiting for a daughter who had once lost her way. Life has a strange way of circling back, of teaching you the same lesson in softer tones when you finally learn to listen, and I suppose that's what happened to me. Emma rebuilt her life slowly, quietly, piece by piece, like someone trying to repair a shattered mirror without cutting her hands, and I watched her from a distance, never interfering, just being there when she called, when she cried, when she laughed again for the first time. She met someone new, a kind man named Daniel, gentle in the way he spoke, careful in the way he listened. He wasn't rich, not like Tyler, but he had something money couldn't buy: patience. He never tried to fix her, never told her how to live, just stood beside her, and that, I think, was what healed her the most. When she told me she was pregnant, I cried, quietly at first, then uncontrollably, because it felt like life was giving me another chance, another chapter, another little soul to love. And when baby Grace was born, I swear the whole house filled with light again, as if God himself had opened the windows of heaven and let hope pour in. I held the tiny baby in my arms, her eyes blinking up at me, and I whispered, "You don't know it yet, but you saved us." And I meant it. Grace brought laughter back into our home, laughter that had been missing for too long. But as she grew, I started noticing something, the same stubborn streak her mother once had, that same fire that made her brave and reckless at the same time, and deep down, I knew life would test her too, just like it tested us. Emma often said she wanted to raise Grace differently, with more freedom, less fear, and I understood that. She didn't want her daughter to grow up with the same walls she had to climb. But sometimes freedom comes with its own shadows, and when Grace turned 16, those shadows started to show. She was smart, creative, endlessly curious, but also restless, always chasing something just out of reach. One night, she came home late, her eyes red, her voice trembling, and before I could even ask what was wrong, she said, "Grandma, I think I messed up." I looked at her, my heart tightening like an old wound reopening. She told me about a boy she met online, older, charming, said all the right things, made her feel special, but now he was asking her to meet somewhere far, to keep it a secret from her mom, and as she spoke, I felt the blood drain from my face. History has a cruel sense of humor sometimes, it repeats, but it always gives you a choice to rewrite the ending. I took her hands, trembling just like Emma's had been years ago, and I said, "Listen to me, Grace. Love should never make you hide." She broke down then, sobbing into my arms, and I held her the same way I had held her mother once, whispering, "You're safe now." The next morning, I told Emma everything. She went pale, then angry, not at Grace, but at herself, saying, "How could I not see it?" And I told her, "Because you trusted her. Because you believed in her. That's what mothers do." Together we called the police, reported the man, and within days they found out he'd been lying about everything, his age, his name, his past. He wasn't just dangerous, he was hunting girls like Grace. The thought made me sick. But when I saw the fear in Emma's eyes, I knew this was her moment of truth, her turn to be the protector, to do what I once did for her. And she did. She stood tall, faced the man in court, made sure he never hurt another girl again. I watched her testify, voice shaking but strong, and I realized, she had become me, only stronger, braver, wiser. The day they convicted him, we walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, and for the first time in decades, I felt peace that wasn't borrowed, it was earned. After that, life slowed down again. Emma and Daniel moved closer to take care of me as my body started to remind me I wasn't young anymore. My knees ached, my breath came shorter, but my heart was lighter than ever. Grace would visit every afternoon after school, bringing me wildflowers from the garden, telling me about her dreams of becoming a lawyer like her grandfather, to help people who can't help themselves, she'd say, and every time she said that, I saw the circle of life close a little tighter. One evening, we were all sitting on the porch, the sun setting like a fire behind the trees, and Grace asked, "Grandma, why did you disappear back then?" "Mom told me a little, but I want to hear it from you." I smiled, that same sad smile I'd worn for years, and said, "Because sometimes disappearing isn't about running away, it's about giving space for truth to grow." She tilted her head, trying to understand, and I added, "When people you love can't see the truth, you can't force them. You have to step back and let life show them." She nodded slowly, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, understanding, maybe even admiration, and I knew then, she'd carry that wisdom farther than I ever could. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone again on that old porch, the same one where it all began, and I realized something I'd never said out loud. I wasn't the one who disappeared. It was the pain. It was the fear. Over the years, they'd slowly faded, replaced by peace. Disappearing hadn't been an ending, it was a transformation. A few weeks later, Emma came running into the house, breathless, holding an envelope. "Mom," she said, "this came in the mail for you." It was old, yellowed, edges torn, postmarked from years ago, before Tyler's letter, before the silence. I opened it carefully, hands shaking, and inside was a small photograph, me, Emma, and her father at a picnic. On the back, written in his handwriting, were just 5 words, "You did everything right, Anna." I hadn't seen that picture in decades. It must have gotten lost in storage or somewhere between the moves. I stared at those words for a long time, tears blurring the ink. You did everything right. Maybe I hadn't been perfect, maybe I made mistakes, but in that moment, holding that old photo, I felt seen, forgiven, and whole. I looked up at Emma, at Grace, both watching me with tears in their eyes, and I said softly, "I think he was right." We all laughed through our tears, the kind of laugh that comes from healing, not humor. As the years drifted on, I grew older, slower, but I never stopped writing letters to Grace, for when she'd grow up, for when I was gone, letters about love, loss, strength, forgiveness. I wanted her to have my words when my voice could no longer reach her. And one of those nights, when the world was quiet and the clock ticked softly beside my bed, I took out one last piece of paper and wrote, "If you ever have to disappear, do it with love, not anger. Leave something behind that helps someone find their way back." I folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and tucked it inside my old wooden box, the same box that once carried the locket that changed everything. Full circle, I thought. Life had come full circle. A few months later, my hands grew weaker, my breath slower, and one peaceful morning, as the sun spilled through the curtains, I closed my eyes with the sound of laughter in the next room, Grace and Emma baking, their voices soft and happy, and I thought, this is how it's supposed to be. No pain, no anger, just peace. I didn't disappear this time, I simply became part of the light that filled that home. When Emma found the box later, after the funeral, she opened it with trembling fingers and found the letter, and as she read those last words, she whispered through her tears, "You didn't disappear, Mom. You just became the air we breathe." And Grace, now grown, placed the same locket around her neck, the one that started it all, and said, "Now it's my turn to carry her story." And that, right there, was the true ending. The disappearance wasn't a vanishing act. It was a transformation, from pain to love, from silence to legacy. And somewhere, beyond this world, I smiled, watching 3 generations of women who finally understood that disappearing never meant leaving, it meant becoming the space where love could